Hello and welcome to HC Highlanders Live. I'm Jason Muker, Associate AD for Compliance and Communications here at Houghton, joined by Director of Athletics Matthew Webb. Don't have a lot of news to report to you this week. We are about a week removed from our first ever virtual student athlete recognition banquet. It wasn't really a banquet, it was a live virtual event it wasn't live, it was recorded about 48 minutes long, where we had some honors for our seniors from the head coaches, a word from the president and from Dr. Webb. We also had some senior speeches by baseball player Ronnie Lott, women's basketball and lacrosse player Corey Beck. We did the passing of the baton, and we had some collage of different videos and photos. And we also honored our Student Athlete Excellence Award winners, David Wessels of baseball and Shelby Langwa of cross country and track and field. So still things going status quo here, working from home, trying to get through this and trying to do as much as we can with you through our social media outlets. So if you're not following us on any of the HC Highlanders social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well, please do so. We're sharing a lot of different things, honoring seniors, updating the news that is happening, and trying to figure out what next year is going to look like. And so there's a lot of meetings going on campus and then within our department discussing those things. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Webb to talk a little bit about tonight's show.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, like Jason said, we're still working from home, working remotely, doing a lot of work. Some people ask, well, you just got all this free time on your hands and nothing to do. In some ways, we're working more and harder than ever before. And like Jason said, we're doing a lot of work and planning for how things will look when students return in the fall, and we're preparing for that. And so there's a lot that needs to go into that. Things are obviously going to look a little different, maybe a lot different in some ways. And we're working through all those details and how things are going to look for when our students return. So we're still plugging away. As our head men's lacrosse coach said in a recent devotional that he gave to the department, one of the things God calls us to do is to do our work. And that's what we have to keep doing. And that's what we're doing here at Houghton. Tonight, it's my privilege to introduce you to Jonathan Figueroa. John is a 2013 graduate of Houghton College, member of the men's soccer team, and played for me. I was coaching then when John was here, and we'll let John share more about this later. John's working in New York City in a hospital, really on the front lines of battling the coronavirus here. So I'm sure there will be a lot to talk about there, John, and anxious to hear about that and just your thoughts on everything at this point and what it's been like for you. But I'd be curious, just to sort of start things off, as a member of the men's soccer team and your 4 years at Houghton, that was a part of it. Obviously wasn't the only thing you're doing here, but maybe give us a brief summary. What was it like for you? Maybe some a favorite memory or something, probably fitness testing, I'm sure, for you.
Definitely.
But what describe for us sort of your Houghton soccer experience, and maybe a favorite memory or two from your time as a member of the men's soccer team.
Well, Coach, I just want to again thank you for having me be able to share. Houghton for me is such a pleasant experience, something so different from where even I grew up and where I'm living right now. Just in terms of kind of being away from all the craziness of city life and stuff. And I just loved how at Houghton I was able to, especially on the men's soccer team, just connect with people all around. In terms of favorite memories, there's way too many to count. There are so many good times on the field, off the field with the men's soccer team. I believe that really has helped shape me as a person, especially under your guidance and, with my peers. As I'm running through all the memories, I don't even know which ones to say, from times of singing songs in the bus to, our devotionals off the field. I mean, all of those memories hold such a special part in my life. Just like reminiscing about everything. So.
What was it that, as you were in high school, thinking about college, I know you had some options. What was it that drew you to Houghton? Yeah, why Houghton?
Well, I think one of the main reasons I chose Houghton, one, they had a very, very strong science background and a really good track record for getting their students into medical schools. So for me, that was a really big, I think that was probably my number one reason of choosing a school. They wanted to go somewhere where they had just a great education, particularly a strong science foundation. And then two, obviously, just being a part of the men's soccer team. At the time, we were NAIA, so I was able to get an athletic scholarship on top of a academic scholarship as well. So that really helped. That really helped kind of guide my decision. And yeah, and another thing that I really wanted was I wanted to go to a Bible-based Christian school, and I think Houghton is something that provided me with, um, you know, somewhere where I can grow my faith, but be able to kind of challenge that and kind of rethink parts of my faith that I was unsure of, but do that in a very safe environment where there were a lot of both faculty and even peers that were kind of going through the same process or were able to guide you through it.
Yeah, so let me piggyback on that a little bit. You mentioned choosing Houghton for sort of the strong reputation of the science department. I think if you're to look historically and traditionally from an athletic perspective, we've had different successes over the years with some of our different programs. Probably soccer has the longest sort of history of success and tradition at the college. And for as many strong academic programs that we have at Houghton as well, I often tell people, if you didn't really know much about Houghton and you were just to hear about Houghton sort of on the street, what you might hear is someone talking about our science program in terms of just the history and tradition. Talk to us a little bit about sort of the quality of the education that you got, whether it's, specific faculty members that you had, and maybe how that has helped prepare you for what you're doing now. Obviously, you've gone through med school, you're out of school now, and you're working in a hospital. Maybe let's get into that a little bit, but maybe start with sort of how you feel Houghton has prepared you well for what you're doing now.
I mean, I would say that in terms of even going through just kind of our basic foundations of science class and the basic biology, chemistry, organic, all of those kind of foundational classes that we need for med school, they were taught very well. And just going back to like Dr. Potter, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Pelletier when he was still there, there were just a great deal of faculty that really, one, they cared. They taught with excellence, and it was one of those things where when I went into medical school and I went into kind of preparing for the MCAT and other things for medical school, I felt very well prepared from the science point of view. I also would like to touch on it is a liberal arts school, so there were a lot of other teachers and classes that we had to take, whether it be lit or whatever. I was an international development minor, multicultural studies, whatever it's called. I forgot, but Dr. Dr. Kiti, she was I would say she was one of my teachers that was probably most shaping to me, just from looking at the world from a multicultural perspective. And that's kind of where my passion for public health kind of flourished. So yeah, there's a great deal of I would say that in terms of the the general education all around really helps prepare you for kind of next steps, whether that be med school or PA school, um, nursing school. It just gives you a good foundation to build upon. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you have to put the work in, but definitely gives you a good stepping stone.
There's another former player before you who'd gone to medical school after his time at Houghton, and he said to me at one point, he said, "Yeah, medical school was easier than Houghton." And I'm not sure that was entirely accurate, but I think what he was trying to say was he just felt so well prepared compared to his peers in medical school from his how he'd been challenged and how he'd been trained at Houghton that he did fine. You know, medical school was he was prepared for it. He was ready for it. So,
Yeah.
well, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? I mean, I obviously know a little bit. In fact, it was just really fun to see you. It was not quite a year ago, a little less than a year ago, when I was visiting my daughter in the Nyack area and was able to sort of touch base with you downtown.
Yeah.
And what was the name of that area where we met?
Dumbo.
In Dumbo, right? In
Yes.
Dumbo. And but why don't you share with us sort of where you're at, what you're doing now, and what's a typical day look like for you?
So currently, I'm a internal medicine resident in New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital here, located in Park Slope, in, Brooklyn, New York. A typical day for me, it's kind of hard to say. Right now, it's a little different than the usual, but um, sorry, so many things to say.
Sure, sure.
But right now, a typical day just involves kind of just getting up. Usually on a normal day, if I'm not working nights, I'm up by like 5 o'clock. Go to the gym, workout, run, and then usually have to get to the hospital around 6:45. Our day usually starts at 7, and then yeah, so we're just essentially, depending on the rotation I'm on, just seeing patients, supervising our intern residents, uh, and then doing admissions, going to lectures, and all of that. As of right now, things have kind of changed. The educational stuff has kind of been put a little bit on the back burner. Obviously, with this crisis, we kind of transitioned a schedule, so everything's shift work now, 7 to 7, um, and essentially it's just to give everyone equal time in the hospital, because to prevent burnout. But yeah, right now I'm in the ICU, our intensive care unit, where we are treating essentially solely COVID patients. Yeah, and so that's been very challenging. I think for the past maybe 6 weeks, we've seen essentially, our first cases coming in and then exponentially ramping up. Um, I think I don't remember the exact number, but we had more than 100 and change patients on ventilators, and then the rest of the hospital was solely just COVID. So definitely different times, different. It's definitely a change to the normal day to day, but something that we're kind of going through, and we take it day by day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for what you're doing. I know healthcare workers around the country are have ramped up sort of what they're dealing with, and obviously you right there in the city where is sort of the epicenter of the pandemic in terms of how we look at it, in North
Right.
America. That's where a lot of the news comes from, and I'm sure you've seen a lot sobering kinds of things, I would imagine.
Mm.
How do you we see all kinds of things in the news. We see the flow charts and the curves and all those kinds of things. Does it seem to be easing up a bit? In terms of the numbers or the quantity, or I mean, we see those kinds of numbers sort of presented through the media. Does that have an impact? It's not like you're working shorter days now because there's fewer patients, but how does it feel in terms of, does it feel like things are getting better?
I mean, I would say, not, I hope not to speak too prematurely, but it does seem to be easing up a tad bit.
Mhm.
I think with all the measures that have been taken place in New York and around the country, just with the social distancing, we've been able to essentially, flatten the curve. I'm sure you've heard quite
Mhm.
a bit of that, and um, so we're not seeing a dramatic rise in the numbers anymore. We still have new cases, but what's good is that our hospital has been seeing kind of a plateau of cases. Our ER is not as busy, which is good, but unfortunately, all the patients who have been admitted to the hospital who are on ventilators are still there. So it's like one of those things where, yes, we're not getting new patients, but we're still taking care of the ones who are very sick. And unfortunately, the ones who are still there are still getting more and more sick.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely a tough situation, but I would say right now we are seeing it ease up a bit.
What's the morale like amongst the staff in the hospital? Well, your hospital. I guess you don't know the other hospitals. You're not in the other ones, but
Right.
what's the morale like? You guys, I would think exhaustion has set in, and probably a lot of just operating on adrenaline but
And coffee.
and coffee. There you go. Drinking mine right
Uh,
now. So
um, that that's a great question. I mean, I would say generally morale has definitely been dwindling, um, just because it's kind of debit, like you said before. It's a kind of sombering experience to face death every day. Not only of the patients that you're taking care of, but there's a lot of conversations with family. Unfortunately, right now, we're not allowing any family to the hospital just for their safety, for the patient's safety.
mhm.
Um, and when you're dealing with families who want to see their loved ones too, that takes a toll on you, and then you yourself, you're just physically exhausted. Obviously these patients, you want to help them, but in a lot of ways it's very we're finding that essentially they're coming in so sick that it's been very difficult to help them. So yeah, morale, I would say right now is it's definitely on the lower side.
Mhm.
I don't know if you know it's tough.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the only word for it right now. I think it's one of those things where everyone's continuing to do their job, but I see a great deal of sadness amongst the staff, all the healthcare providers. Just it, it's sadness. It's kind of fatigue.
Mhm.
They're sick of the situation, and I'm included into that. It's
Yeah,
very hard to see on a day-to-day
yeah.
basis.
I tell people I'm getting sick of Zoom, and that's just like a whole other, like, Zoom's just not even a problem. But doing virtual meetings all the time is getting old. But doesn't even compare to being sick of the virus.
Hey, I mean, if I had to do virtual meetings all day, I don't know, I would get pretty sick of it too.
You get sick of it, but the impact of it doesn't have the same impact as what COVID does. Hey, how's your family doing? I know your dad's working in the hospital. Your sister's in. I'm trying to think where she's at in her.
She's in Philadelphia.
She's in Philly, and
Yeah.
David. I don't know what David's doing, but
I
how's
don't
your
I don't
family?
I don't know either.
How's your
Um,
family doing in
so
their
that
respective places? Your dad's at the same hospital as you, right?
exactly, yeah. So my dad is a nephrologist, kidney doctor there. They're doing okay. Actually, dad ended up getting COVID, and it
Mhm.
looks like my mom had the symptoms as well. So they're doing well though. Dad is still kind of recovering. He just came back to work yesterday, I believe.
Mm.
I haven't been able to talk to him as much. Oh my gosh, it was their anniversary yesterday.
You better reach out.
Yeah, after this. But yeah, I mean, he's feeling better, and mom is doing better too. My sister is also an internal medicine resident, second year at in Philadelphia at a Jefferson hospital. So they're starting to see their caseload come up as well. So
Mhm.
she's been telling me, they're getting prepared. They've seen what was going on in New York. I was telling her, unfortunately, it's kind of hard to prepare for this, and it's a lot more difficult than we thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
But I think now that they've seen kind of a model of what's going on, maybe they can kind of deal with it a little bit better.
Well, at some point when you call your parents to wish them happy anniversary, tell them I said hello, send my greetings, and I miss the mangoes that your parents used to bring every time they'd come visit. They'd bring us a big box of mangoes, so we miss that, but miss you all too. So, what's some of the things we've seen in the news are sort of all kinds of either retired medical professionals and a variety of people sort of volunteering their time back. Have you seen that? Has that sort of happened in are there volunteers that have come back and helping, or how's
I
that?
mean, definitely not so much in my hospital. In terms of like the older retired community,
Mhm.
I know friends. I have close friends in other Brooklyn hospitals or New York hospitals that are seeing some of that, either retired or just about to retire. Uh, Doctors kind of staying on to help.
Mhm.
I guess for us, we've just seen a lot of people from out of state that are coming in to kind of help really ease the burden of, unfortunately, we are experiencing colleagues who are getting sick as well. So they need that break. They need to take time off, do their quarantine. So I am seeing a lot of people from like Missouri and um, Texas and North Carolina. So
Mhm.
a lot of Southern draws in
In the
New
hospital.
York, which is very which is very different. But it's been good. They're a very very welcome addition to our team. Um, yeah, I think they're having just as much as a difficult time getting transitioned to New York life, but it's been good.
So I don't frequent the city real often. Been there a few times, but I can only imagine like how different is it now going to and from work. I mean, when I saw you 8 months ago, whatever it was, I mean, there's people everywhere. There's lights.
Yeah.
Everything's open. Just there's noise. I mean, what's it like now going to and from work? I mean, I'm sure you see people occasionally, but it's got to look just so different and feel so. And like when you're done with work, like, you just go home. I
Yeah.
guess because everything's closed, right? I mean,
Yeah, it definitely is a lot different. I mean, I chose Brooklyn for a reason, I wanted to be in the action, but it's feeling a little bit like Houghton right now. Uh, but on a more serious note, I think people for the most part, uh, well, actually, I won't say what I truly feel, but um, it has definitely been a lot more quiet. I mean, the restaurants around and the bars, whatever you can think of that would be open,
mhm,
they're now all closed. Again, we live in a part of Brooklyn that's open pretty late. I wouldn't say it's like Manhattan where it's 24/7, but um, my walks and rides home that used to be filled with a lot of pedestrians and people and traffic. The streets are empty. I'm riding my bike all over the place, without kind of, without any traffic, without really seeing many
mhm.
people. So it is definitely a change. But the walks to work are some of the most quiet walks I've ever experienced, which is nice. Um, but it's a very, very stark contrast to what's going on in the hospital with the busyness and the
Yeah.
and just the hectic nature. And again, that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of quelled down a little bit, improved. But yeah, it definitely was, a couple weeks back was a very, very stark difference.
Yeah.
Very something going from a peaceful place to not so peaceful at all.
Do you see people practicing social distancing? I'm sure you see cases where people aren't. And I mean, we're in Houghton. I sort of joked with my brother who went to Houghton years ago, so he's familiar with Houghton. And it was sort of the first week into sort of this new reality. I texted him. I said, it feels like I'm living in a ghost town. And he wrote back. He's like, dude, you already lived in a ghost town. And so, Houghton being very rural, definitely feels like people are practicing social distancing pretty well. And we've gotten out occasionally. I'll go with my kids who are all home now. We'll go to the field and do a little soccer session, and that's been sort of fun. And we've got a new disc golf course in Houghton, so
Oh wow,
we get out in the woods and up on the where all the cross country trails are, and so that's kind of fun. So there's some activities that we can do here while practicing social distancing, and for by and large, people are abiding by all the regulations and requests. But you hear stories of people gathering, or you hear in the news, some high profile athlete having a party, or, doing that sort of thing. But, there's pockets, I'm sure, where people are disregarding all of the.
There always will be someone who wants to do what they want to do. So it's something that we've kind of prepared for already, and we kind of take it as it is. So.
Well, John, thanks for your time. I do want to end with a story, but I want to give you the opportunity to tell this story first, and because I want to hear it from your perspective. You probably know where I'm going with this.
But I don't know if we have to. I don't know if we have to tell this story.
I think we need to tell this story. You called me one day, said, "Coach, I got a concussion. I don't think I can play in the game on Saturday." What happened?
Well, Coach, I don't know if I can tell this story.
Well, I'll just relay the story very briefly. I got a call from John on a Friday morning. We'd had practice the night before on Thursday, and John says on Friday, "Coach, I got a concussion. I don't think I can play." And this is in the spring. We had a spring scrimmage the next day, I think.
Yeah.
And I said, "John, what happened?" I was trying to remember from practice the night before. I couldn't remember anything that happened. And long story short, John had passed out while in the bathroom and found himself on the floor, and he'd knocked his head on the floor and had given himself a concussion Friday morning.
Right before scrimmage.
Right before the scrimmage on Saturday. And so the most unlikely of concussion stories you'll ever hear had nothing to do with sport. It had everything to do with just getting ready for the day in the bathroom.
Just going in the bathroom.
Just going to the bathroom and fell off. So there you go. Well, John, I want you to know you've been on my mind quite a bit in recent weeks, and we've been praying for you. And thank you for all you've done. It was fun to reconnect with you 8 months ago or whatever, and sort of be in touch with you a little bit here over the last few weeks, just texting and connect. I love seeing you wearing your Houghton shirt right now. And I just want to say blessings on you, and Houghton loves you. And hopefully one of these days we'll get you back for an alumni game or visit to campus and be able to reconnect in person at some point.
Yeah, I need to see the new facilities. I'm very excited to kind of see what.
They're nice. They're nice. So, well, thanks so much, John. It has been great having you. And
thanks, Coach.
Have a good night's sleep.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Bye.